And I will call the select board meeting of Tuesday, June 23rd to order. And the first item is approval of the agenda. There are some changes from the draft agenda that was distributed. Items 15 and 12 are postponed. 15 is moving to July 28th. The college will come to speak about their plans for the fall. Item 12 is postponed. There's a new item 12, which is a liquor license request from Cattails. So with those changes, are there any other recommended changes?
One more change, item 13, capital improvement project account closeouts is not ready for tonight.
Okay.
So we'll postpone that till the 14th as well.
Okay.
I'll make a motion to approve the agenda as amended.
Second.
Moved and seconded. All in favor signify with a thumbs up. Okay. Next is approval of our June 9th select board meeting minutes.
Moved.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Are there any requested changes?
I had a small one.
Okay.
Line 305, changing the word should to could. It's very minor.
Good change.
Oh my.
Any other? Then all in favor of approving the draft minutes with the small change, signify with a thumbs up. Okay. Citizen comments. I don't see anybody on. Is there anybody who's called in, Kathleen?
Everybody here so far is on the agenda.
Okay. And we'll move on and we'll go to Chief Hanley with the local emergency management update.
Hi. We're getting starting to get a lot of calls about people without masks, people going into businesses not masked and that kind of thing. We take the reports and we're trying to assemble them. I think it just helps us get an idea of what the compliance level is out there. There's really not a lot we can do with that. We see the state now has scaled back on their situation reporting, so we're only getting maybe 2 reports a week instead of the 7 days a week that we used to get. We had a little snafu with the pop-up testing come this Friday. It seemed to disappear off the registration list. It turns out that's because it was full. And so they weren't taking any more reservations, but they've added a whole bunch more dates. We sent out that bulletin. June 30th, there's one, July 10th, 17th, 24th, 31st, and then they're going to continue them into August, but they're much more restricted. There's only leaving a small window for registrations. So if anybody wants to get tested, make sure you get in there early because they're going to fill up fast. Myra Cook told me this morning that the Middlebury test last week was the busiest in the state. But now their technicians are being sent all around the state dealing with this contact tracing and some of this outbreak testing that's going on. So they've scaled back what they're doing in Middlebury. They'll be there every week, just they won't be taking as many people. And other than that, things are fairly smooth. We're not having any losses or anything with respect to COVID-19 infections. I see Addison's numbers have gone up again this week. And that's about it.
Thank you, Chief. Are there any questions for Chief?
Just for clarity, if anybody is, what is the procedure of getting tested? Is there a charge for them? Is insurance? How does it work for people who want to know?
There's no charge. It's all free. You just got to register.
Oh, okay.
Folks I know will try to take a chance and just show up and try to get in. And that works if people that are registered don't show up. They'll be happy to test you. But generally, they prefer that you register so they have the numbers and they can prepare for it.
Also, on the mask resolution we did, I think there seems to be a lot of confusion among people in town. There's a lot of chatter about people thinking that it's an ordinance. There was a discussion on Front Porch Forum, like some people are saying it is an ordinance. Actually, the Eagle had Sun Community News Online, the one I get, that had a headline saying that Middlebury now requires mask, sounding like it's a ordinance. I think there's a lot of confusion going on in town.
You're right, and I've gotten a number of calls on it myself. We explained that it is not
Yeah.
an ordinance. Right now, we've got a spate of really hot weather, and frankly, it can be a bit hazardous if you're outdoors and you're wearing a mask. But we do tell them, once you go into the air conditioning, please put your mask on. As long as you're going to be moving around outside, you probably can get away without it without any serious ramifications. We don't want people dropping because they can't breathe. When this spate of hot weather goes, we'll look a little more seriously at that. But we hope that once they get indoors, they're masking up.
Correct. Thank you, Chief.
Any other questions of Chief? Okay, thank you, Chief.
Welcome.
So we'll go to Fred with an update on
Okay, my laptop died, and so I'm on my phone. So I just want to make sure you can see and hear me okay?
we can.
Great. All right. So the House and Senate passed S-350, and that's on the governor's desk for signature. That has $70 million in it for grants to businesses. That 70 will be split up, 50 million to the tax department for businesses that file sales and use and rooms and meals taxes. So it'll be an automatic, they'll have to apply, but the tax department has the ability to, check their the tax receipts this year against last year and just automatically calculate the grant amount and send it to the business. So that'll go fairly quickly, and that's expected to be up and running beginning of next week. The step businesses can take right now for that program is if they don't have a My Vermont tax account, they should go on and establish one if they're eligible for those grants. So the 20 million will go to the Agency of Commerce, be accessed through the Agency of Commerce, and that will be for the businesses that don't collect those trust taxes. For both programs, you have to show a 75% loss in 1 month from this year compared to the same month of last year. You also have to have at least one or more non-owner employees. So that's already approved. The governor will be signing that bill any day now, and both the Department of Taxes and the Agency of Commerce are setting up, the application mechanisms for that money for businesses to apply to. Another relief bill is on its way through the legislature. It's passed the House. It's H966. That has 43 million in it for broadband programs, 68 million for housing programs, 84, almost 85 million more in business grants, and then $20 million for hazard pay for frontline workers. The 85 million in business grants, again, part of that will go through the tax department and part through the Agency of Commerce. And then there's some smaller amounts that are going to be going through some other programs. Like there's 5 million for agriculture, food, forest, and wood products businesses that'll go through the Working Lands Enterprise Board. 5 million directed towards women-owned and minority-owned businesses that'll go through the Vermont Community Loan Fund, and 3 million for businesses that provide highway and bridge maintenance services. That'll go through the Agency of Commerce, and 1.5 million for outdoor recreation businesses that'll go through A&R. So those smaller amounts, those set-asides are separate from the 70 million that will again be split up between tax and the Agency of Commerce. The difference on this second bill that's going through is the business has to show a 50% or more loss for 1 month compared to that same month last year. Still has that same requirement that the business has to have one or more non-owner employee. Then there's other requirements, but they have to have a business. The business has to be domiciled in Vermont. There's a few other, but those are the main ones. So you can see that so there's approximately 140 million going to be available for small businesses that meet those requirements. Businesses that will not be eligible for those are those that are self-employed, not sole proprietors that don't have any employees. They're not going to be eligible for this funding. The second bill that's going through also has money. The House passed version has funding for marketing, $3 million to provide marketing support to businesses, $3 million for technical assistance. That'll be through an RFP process at the Agency of Commerce. There's $5 million in there for nonprofit arts and culture organizations that'll go through the Vermont Arts Council. $1 million for the Better Places program through the Vermont Department of Housing and Community Development. That'll end up going to communities to do things like, have more table areas, outside table areas, and meeting places for people available. There's $5 million going to on community action for a food insecurity program called Restaurants and Farmers Feeding the Hungry. And then, as I mentioned, there's 20 million in there for hazard pay for frontline workers. I'm hearing that the hazard pay amount will probably get increased in the Senate. So that bill is in the Senate right now, but they're expected to finish up the end of this week and go home until August. So everybody's expecting this bill to pass by the end of the week. So not as robust as the governor's proposal, but still a lot of grant money there for Vermont business. And the agency will be able to set program application available. I would be ready to start this next week. Probably the Agency of Commerce application will be ready to start taking applications just after the 4th of July. Any questions on that?
Fred, how much of the CARES money is still being held back at the state level at this point that they haven't done any?
My understanding is that they've allocated all of it now between these bills and this second bill that's going through right now has a lot of money in it for other things like healthcare and other activities. And my understanding is they've allocated the whole 1.25 billion and maybe over allocated some of it. But I've been told that they're not holding back any money now to try to fill in the budget.
Super. Any questions of Fred? Okay, thanks a lot, Fred. Appreciate you keeping us informed.
Stay cool.
Yeah. Aaron Guyette, our VHB project manager, who we haven't seen in a while, but has been working steadfastly behind the scenes to continue to advance the downtown bridge replacement project. He's going to speak to us tonight a little bit about the efforts on Middlebury Historic Village National Register.
Yeah, thanks, Brian. I like your background there. It's nice.
Yeah, I think you may have been the one to design it, huh?
I appreciate a few minutes tonight. We'll try to be brief here, but also to answer any of your questions. Got a few people also on with me. Two of our historic preservationists, Britta Ton and Caitlin O'Shea, as well as Judith Ehrlich, who is the VTrans State Historic Preservation Officer. So I'd like to talk to you tonight just about a phase of the project that we chatted about way back in 2016, 2017 timeframe, and it's sat a little bit dormant since then. This project is funded in a large part through federal money, and as a requirement of using federal money, the project had to undergo NEPA evaluation, NEPA documentation, which is the National Environmental Policy Act. It also had to undergo a 4F review and a Section 106 review, which are both 4F is more on the historic preservation side, and Section 106 historic and cultural resources. So historic resources and archaeological resources. This project does have impacts to historic resources in the downtown area. There are permanent impacts to the existing bridges, which have already been removed. Those bridges were deemed to be historic. There's also some temporary impacts to some of the lands downtown, and obviously, most of that downtown area is under current construction projects. So the temporary impacts are pretty clear to see. So as a result of having those temporary and permanent impacts, one of the mitigation requirements under the Section 106 review was to prepare a new National Register of Historic Places nomination for an updated Middlebury Village Historic District. And so that's what we want to chat with you about tonight, just the process that we're going to go through for that, what you can expect. And to do that, I'm going to turn it over to Britta Ton. You're muted, Britta.
Yeah. Thanks, Aaron, for the introduction. So what I want to focus on is a little bit more about the technical process that myself and Caitlin O'Shea, my colleague, are going to be undergoing for this project. So this project is ultimately an update to the existing Middlebury Village Historic District nomination. So the existing historic district in Middlebury Village is somewhat dated because it was listed in the National Register in 1976. In 1980, it was amended to increase the boundary. In 2001, one property in North Pleasant Street was added to the district. I'm not sure if we're able to show a map on the screen right now, but we do have a map that shows that, and I'm just wondering, am I able to share my screen? Is that okay? With whoever's, well, here, I'll go ahead.
Kathleen, you want me to do it?
It would be helpful to have a map up on the screen so you get a visual picture of what we're talking about. If not, it's okay. But I'll just continue on in the interest of time. So,
Britta?
Yeah.
We've made you a co-host, so you can share your
Oh, okay, so I can share. Okay, I just wanted to clarify that. Okay, thank you. So, should maybe take just a second to load, as if someone could let me know when they can see it. It's hard for me to tell.
I can see it.
See the map. Oh, excellent. Okay, great. So, you can see a map of Middlebury Village here, and the existing historic district boundary is denoted by the orange and yellow line. So the orange line is the original 1976 nomination. The yellow line is the expanded district boundary that dates from 1980. So I'll zoom out a little bit so you can see it better. So from an architectural perspective, Middlebury Village remains amazingly intact, and many of the buildings have not actually changed much since the nomination was originally completed. Some of the buildings have not changed in over 200 years. They look still the same as they did when they were first built. However, this early nomination documentation, such as the one for Middlebury Village, lacks detail. Our standards for documenting buildings and structures and completing National Register nomination forms have changed quite a bit. So an update to the Middlebury Village Historic District will have much more detail and will be a better tool for understanding the hundreds of historic resources within Middlebury Village. So this project is going to be completed in 2 phases. The first phase, which we're just beginning, is a survey of the village, which needs to be completed according to Division for Historic Preservation guidance for historic district nominations. So the purpose of the survey is to help inform the National Register nomination by recording relevant information about the history and architecture of each building. So as part of this process, you will see myself and my coworker Caitlin O'Shea in the field with tablets, walking around various neighborhoods of Middlebury, recording information about individual buildings, and these will be eventually documented on these standardized survey forms. So some of the information we're collecting includes the building's date of construction, its style, the materials it's constructed of, and I want to note, be very clear that all the field work will be completed from public right-of-way, so we're not going to be entering private property to do this project. So this phase 1 survey, calling it the phase 1 portion of this project, the survey will also involve an evaluation of the historic district boundary. So this is to determine if it should be expanded, or less likely, but I guess a possibility brought in a little bit. So the purpose of the expansion would be to have a more complete nomination that includes all the areas of Middlebury Village that are architecturally and historically significant components of the village. So we recognize, and we have identified some areas of the nomination, or some geographical areas not included, and these are pretty important neighborhoods such as South Street, a portion of North Pleasant Street, Elm Street, the area around, I believe that's High Street. So we're going to be surveying these neighborhoods and documenting their buildings as well to confirm that they should be included within the updated historic district. I should also mention that most of these neighborhoods are already listed on the State Register of Historic Places. So you see different colored zones on this map. So this is just a way for us to sort of organize our survey efforts. There are probably over 400 buildings that we're going to be looking at. So it's a huge project, and this is our way of kind of keeping on track. The areas that are striped are areas that are currently outside of the historic district boundary that we've identified as areas to survey as well, in addition to the buildings within the historic district. So I just want to mention that no buildings are going to be newly listed on the State Register of Historic Places as part of this project. It's simply used to inform the National Register nomination. So the actual completion of the nomination is the second phase of the project. So this is a standard form that's used by the National Park Service, which administers the National Register program, and it records relevant information about the history, architecture, significance of Middlebury Village, and then information about each individual building or structure, such as bridges that are within the district. So I believe everyone received a handout in your packages, at least the members of the town and the select board, which gives a really good overview about the National Register. So I'm not going to get into too much detail about that right now. This is just a brief overview of the project itself and really focus on the survey, which is the first step that we'll be engaged in probably over the next year. So right now, I'm happy to take questions. I just provided a ton of information, so hopefully everyone followed that okay. So please let me know if you have any questions that I can attempt to field. Sounds like no.
I've got just 2 other kind of closing thoughts on this topic. Obviously, a presence in the field with both Britta and Caitlin. You know, this is kind of the informative session to give you all an update on this and notify you of it. We'll also be working with Jim Gish on getting this information into his blog, and probably pictures of Britta and Caitlin, just so folks who may see them out and about know who they are. And then in addition to that, there's a July 8th public meeting being planned to give an update on the overall project, and we'll have a segment of that meeting which addresses this topic as well.
I got a question. I'm Dan Brown, and I own the Swift House Inn. And this is just a casual observation. And the Swift House is actually in one of the districts, but the Carriage House, which is next to it, is not in any of the districts. And the Carriage House was built by Clinton Smith in the 1880s. He also built Morgan Horse Farm, Town Hall Theater, Methodist Church, probably one of the most renowned architects. So it's just curious that it's not in, although my parking lot across the street is in the district.
I think this is an area that we have identified as needing a little bit more survey because, sorry about the ice cream truck in the background, if you can hear that.
Boy.
Yeah. So this is an area that we have identified, and I believe it's probably right in that area. I think it's called High Street.
Yes, it's right there on High Street.
Yeah, so we recognize that the existing district boundary kind of cuts off in a what seems to be slightly arbitrary fashion there. So your Carriage House will definitely be surveyed as part of this survey effort.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
Okay, if there are no other questions for Britta or Aaron, not sure how maybe you can unshare your screen, Britta?
Thank you.
Now I can see everybody. Are there any more questions for them? Okay, thank you very much. And so we'll be seeing you around town then.
Yes. Thanks for your time.
Thank you.
Jim's here with us this evening to talk about parking needs and ideas and a solution for turning over parking places at the post office. So with that, Jim?
I am. Thanks, Brian. Appreciate it. So construction is certainly heated up downtown, but I'm here to talk about parking and specifically parking in front of the post office. So I've worked with VHB and with VTrans to provide parking in front of the post office. And this is, so you can see from the diagram here, this parking will be in the area from north of the crosswalk up to Seymour Street. And so we've got a total of 11 spaces, 2 handicap spots on either side of the crosswalk, 3 in front of the community house, and 7 that abut the town green. Right now, these are 2-hour time limit spaces, as is the case with much of downtown. And so we are recommending that the 7 spaces that sit alongside the town green for the duration of the 10-week shutdown be signed for 15-minute parking. The idea here is that most folks using the post office are going in to mail a package, to check their P.O. box. They're in and out in 15 minutes, and this would help turn over those spaces while parking is at a real minimum downtown. And so this is the recommendation from the VHB traffic engineer who has put together our plan. And I have come to the select board tonight to let you know about it, and also to ask for the select board's approval of the temporary shift to a 15-minute time limit for these 7 parking spaces.
Questions of Jim?
No, I mean, it makes perfectly good sense for this, and it's what we need to do. So I'm for it, and I'd make the motion if you want it.
Why don't you go ahead and make the motion?
Okay, I'm going to move to approve a temporary 15-minute time limit on 7 parking spaces alongside the town green that are set aside for post office customers during the 10-week closure of Main Street. The limit will go into effect on or about Monday, July 13th, and remain in effect until on or about Monday, September 21st.
I'll second.
Heather, second? Okay, any other comments or questions on that?
Can I ask a question?
Absolutely.
Jim, so there are spaces on the other side south of the crosswalk, correct? What's the time limit on those?
That whole area right now is 2 hour, but when during the 10-week shutdown, Heather, those spaces will be an active construction zone. So
Oh, okay,
there's no parking south of the crosswalk at all.
okay. I misunderstood that from the map. I thought there was still some spaces south of the crosswalk that would be available and wondered why we weren't making those 15 minutes. So, got it. Okay,
I think south of the crosswalk will be all fenced off, Heather, so
okay,
that'll be the construction area.
okay. Thank you.
Any other comments or questions? Okay. Hearing none, all in favor of the motion to approve Jim's request, signify with thumbs up. Okay, Jim. You're going to focus on little education in your blog, so people know what to expect.
Absolutely, and I'll be working with Jody, who is our parking enforcement agent, too, to just monitor those spaces, particularly in the first week or so of people getting used to the 15-minute time limit.
Yeah, I think she's shown that she does a good job.
She's become
more encouraging than just being out there writing tickets.
She's got a smile and she's become a local favorite, Brian.
Yeah, super. Okay, thanks, Jim.
Thank you.
Next is Dan. Dan, there you are. You moved on my screen, Dan.
Yeah, sorry. All right. Good evening, everyone. The first item on the agenda from the Infrastructure Committee is informational only. That's a fire truck purchase update. Chief Dave Shaw and the purchase chairman, Tim Porter, were there to brief the committee on where they're at with getting a new truck for the department. It'll be a pumper truck, and they hope to have it to you and the committee in July, and then to the select board either in July or August with what their proposal is going to be towards purchase. But they're looking at a $600,000 to $650,000 price tag on the new pumper, and so they believe they're 3 months ahead of schedule on getting it on the process, but they'll be back to us shortly to review it with the Infrastructure Committee and the Select Board. The second item is a recommendation for approval of a change order for the overhead doors and the fire alarm system at the Police Department building reuse project. When we got the bid from VMS, there were four alternatives, and so this change is for the first, is for two of these alternatives, number 1 and number 3. Number 1 is for 2 overhead doors at the original wastewater plant control building. That cost is $7,800. Alternative 3 is for a fire alarm system for the cruiser garage and the control building, and that cost is $11,000. So I'm requesting the board at this time to approve the change orders for alternate 1 and alternate 3.
I'll move to approve a change order to the contract for VMS construction for the Police Department Adaptive Reuse Project for alternative 1, 2 overhead doors for the original control building at a total cost of $7,800.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Any questions or comments on that? Hearing none, all in favor with a thumbs up. Okay. Heather?
I'll further move to approve a change order to the contract with VMS Construction for the Police Department Adaptive Reuse Project for alternative number 3, fire alarm system for the cruiser garage and control building at a total cost of $11,000.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Any questions or comments on that?
I would just comment quickly that adding these 2 alternatives in still keeps us under what we had budgeted for the project.
It's going along pretty smoothly, isn't it? Yeah. Okay, all in favor, signify with a thumbs up. Okay. Dan?
All right, next item is a recommendation on the Court Square water improvement project bid. We received one bid, and that was from Champlain Construction. Their bid was $1,828,654.83. The engineer's estimate was a little over 1.3 million, so the bid was about 500,000 above engineer's estimate. So what I'm going to ask you to do tonight is to not approve that bid. Basically negates the process. And what we're going to do is go back and kind of take another look at how we're going to do the project to still meet the V-Trans paving schedule. And so what that means, we're going to go from Cross Street north to Court Square, and then across Court Square into Washington Street. That's been the most troublesome spot. And Robert Clark and I feel that that can still happen before the July 15th cutoff, where we need to get out of there before V-Trans gets in there with their paving. So we're going to put that out to bid in October. Certainly expect more bids because there's one more time, and it's, gives bidders a chance to check their schedule and hopefully bid on our project. So what that means is the other section between Seymour Street by the Congo Church and through the Green and up to Court Square will not be done until sometime after the paving project is over in a subsequent year, depending on how our finances go. So tonight I just need you to formally reject the bid from Champlain Construction.
I'll make a motion to reject the bid from Champlain Construction for the Court Street, Court Square Water Improvement Project.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Are there any other questions or comments on that? Okay, all in favor of rejecting the bid, signify with a thumbs up. Okay. Next, Dan?
Sure. The next one is the recommendation for approval of the FY21 Water Department budget and water user charges. The Infrastructure Committee has reviewed the water budget, and in your packet there's your typical slide show that we usually have for you, outlining some of the water department's major drivers. Most significantly is the bond payment for the $1 million bond from several years ago. This would be our first principal payment for that bond. The principal is $100,000, and I believe the interest is around $30,000. The other large item is the increase there, as it comes up, is an increase in capital improvements to fund some of these improvements that we've been talking about for a while. So that's an increase of $110,000. And there's some other smaller increases, as you see there. So the water budget turns out to be, page flipped here. The water budget is $1,669,977. So the first point of business would be to approve that budget, and then we'll talk about the rates.
Let me do it. I move to approve the FY20 water fund budget of $1,669,997.
Second.
Second.
And seconded. Were there any questions on that budget? The drivers that we saw in our packet, and Kathleen just put in front of us? All in favor with a thumbs up? Okay.
All right, so to fund that budget, there will be some changes in the rates for the base rate and the user rate. So as that screen comes up, so the water base rate we're proposing would change from $50 to $60 for in-town users. And then it would change up to go to $65 for the out-of-town users. And just FYI, the out-of-town users are those that are in the Weybridge area, Putnam Bridge Road and Tucker Development north of town. The user rate, which is the rate per 1,000 gallons, would go from $3.43 to $3.75 per 1,000. And so as we've done last year, as we did last year, we've tried to balance the base rate and the usage rate to try to make it palatable for the lower users and not too extreme for the higher users, and tries to balance so nobody on either end of the usage gets hit very hard. So so that on your screen there is the current FY20 and proposed FY21. See, the base rate goes from $50 to $60, and this is for what's shown here is for a typical user, and in our town, typical user is about 9,300 gallons per quarter. So you're seeing, you can slide. I guess that's the. Can you slide it over, or is it just where the screens are for everyone to see the? Maybe it's me. Get rid of it. There's the change. The change is $12.98 per quarter for the water. So I'm requesting the board to approve the change in the base rate and the usage rate.
I'll move to approve the FY20 water base rate of $60 for in-town users and a water base rate of $65 for out-of-town users and a usage rate of $3.75 per 1,000 gallon for in-town users and a $3.95 per 1,000 gallons for out-of-town users.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Are there any questions or comments on those changes?
So Dan, is that on the screen that you just showed, is that a typical amount that a person will pay for the $94 or something? I don't have the screen in front of me.
Yeah, a typical user that doesn't necessarily mean residential. Yeah, 9,300 gallons per quarter, and those figures reflect what the charge would be if you use that amount.
But this one says 1,000 gallon, or is it 10,000 gallon? The usage of 343 per 1,000 gallon, right?
Right. So the way the math goes on this, Farhad, is if it's 9,300 gallons per quarter for the average user, you would take $60, and then on top of that you would take 9.3, which is 9.3 units of 1,000 gallons. So it's 9.3 times 3.75, and that's where you get the $34.88.
Okay, and you're saying that's a typical average bill that people are getting?
Yes, we took a look at several areas in the town, kind of tried to figure out who had 3 or 4 kids, and that's fairly average. Of course, there are some that are below that and some that are higher than that.
All right, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Are there any other questions? Okay, all in favor of adopting the recommended water rates signify with a thumbs up. Okay. Now wastewater.
Yep. Wastewater budget. Again, the committee reviewed the budget and the rate schedule. If we can look at the major drivers, there really isn't much. Probably a couple of things to point out, and I could have also with the water department. Workers' comp increase went up by a fairly good amount. That's spread apart department wide through the town. Lines 27 and 28 are increases in wages. Line 93 is an important one, increased by $30,000 for electricity. Has a lot to do with the change in sludge characteristics. For a variety of reasons, can be temperature or changes in discharge by users. The sludge characteristics change, which means it may take longer to press, which means you use more water, more heat to get it up to temperature. So this is a line that Bob is requesting an increase by $30,000. Minor increase in capital improvements. Basically, that's a number that just makes the math work by using whole cents in when we calculate a rate change. And there were some decreases in some of the line items, and they totaled about not quite $20,000. So to fund this budget, get my sheet flipped here. The wastewater rate would go to, I'm proposing a $1 per quarter rate increase in the base rate. You'll see that in the middle of the chart in the lighter blue, and retain the usage charge at $6.78 per 1,000 gallons of usage. So you'll see overall there was just $1 change in the rate for a typical user at 9,300 gallons. I want to point out that there was no change needed in the usage charge. A couple 3 years ago, we negotiated an agreement with Agrimark, and as a process to get them up to the same level as a cost per 1,000 gallons that everyone else pays. And so there's one more step with that happens in December. So they're sending us more wastewater, and they're also paying more of their fair share. So that has helped to stabilize the wastewater usage charge. So the bottom line is a combination of the water and usage for a typical user. You can see that in the little darker blue there. So with $12.98 per quarter for the water, $1 per quarter for the wastewater, comes out to a change of $13.98 for the wastewater users. There is no difference in charges between in-town and out-of-town. And so I would just need the board to want to approve the wastewater budget of $2,792,514. I'll do that one first, and then we'll address the rate change.
I'll move to approve an FY21 wastewater fund budget of $2,792,514.
Second. Moved and seconded. Are there any questions or comments on the budget?
Yes, Brian, you can't find me, but this is Dan. I have a kind of a technical question. Line 93, due to change in sludge characteristics, does that mean the characteristics of the sludge that we're now getting there has universally changed, or is this a periodic thing that the sludge changes over seasons or times, or what?
Probably more accurately, the second part. Temperature does affect the microorganisms in the aeration tanks, and then therefore affects how that sludge settles out and how it coagulates is probably the best way to say it, which means how quickly and efficiently does the water come out when you press it. And so when it gets a little, well, slimier, if you will, it doesn't press as well, so it has to, you have to slow the presses down, which takes more energy, takes longer, so you're using electricity for a longer period of time. It also affects the amount of water that's used to clean the belts on the filter presses, and then it also can affect the electricity that's used to heat the sludge as it goes through final process with the line. But most of it is in the pressing process.
Just curious, that's a technical thing. I was wondering if it was, I have 100 one-line funny ones, but I'll keep them to myself right now.
Okay.
Thank you.
Questions or comments? Kathleen, I can't actually see, there we go. So we have a motion and a second, and all in favor of approving the recommended wastewater fund budget, signify with a thumbs up. And Heather, I think he's already gone through the base rate change, if you would care to.
Sure. I move to approve an FY21 base rate of $31 per quarter and a usage rate of $6.78 per 1,000 gallons.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Questions on that? Pretty straightforward. All in favor, signify with a thumbs up. And I don't know if you've had a chance to tour the wastewater plant yet. We would normally have a select board tour of all the facilities and everything. So it'll be an education for you if you haven't.
We'll spend some extra time on the sludge press for you.
Yes, yeah, I will. It's at the top of my list of things I want to learn once we're let loose, so be careful.
You will definitely want to do it on a cool, windy day.
Yes.
So, Brian, I just realized when I made the motions for the water fund budget and the water base rates, I was reading off the notes and they said FY20 and they should have said FY21. So maybe I just ask for Beth to correct my motion in the minutes that they say FY21 because I didn't catch it until I got to the wastewater part.
Yeah, friendly amendment. I think we're all
Yes.
good with that. I see a lot of heads nodding. Okay. Good catch.
Yeah. Okay, the next item is, so we're all set with that, everybody?
Yeah.
Okay. All right, next item is recommendation on purchase of a street sweeper. Bill Kernan set out specifications for manufacturers, suppliers of street sweepers. Kathleen, do you have that street sweeper bid summary that you
Yeah,
can?
just a sec.
Yep, okay. So I'll keep talking while she does that. So he got, let's see, 5-6 bids from a variety of vendors. This is reviewed from the, with the committee. And the way the committee came up, decision was to pursue what's highlighted in yellow. It's a Freightliner Johnston sweeper. It's sold through Viking Chavez, which is in state. That price is $278,650. You'll see some near the bottom of the little chart there, some yeses and nos. Nos are where it didn't meet specification, and a lot of that was based on the horsepower of the motor that runs the vacuum part. This is a vacuum sweeper. Ours is a mechanical with brooms and flights and scoopers, if you will. This is like a big vacuum cleaner. And so the reason for the higher horsepower is that when we do Court Street or parking lots or wide streets, we have both brooms going at the same time on each side of the vehicle, and that higher horsepower is required to do that. So just a couple other things to point out. This one that the committee recommends is already built. It is down in North Carolina and will be brought to Vermont. The other one, which was by Vikings, through Viking Chavez, was letter C on the far right. A little cheaper, but it would not be available until November. And then you'd have to add to that cost would be to fix ours, which would be at least $5,000. And then there's some other items that are already on the item or the letter B that you would have to add to letter C to make it, roughly the same. So it works out that B is a better price and also is available, very, very, very soon. So that's where the committee decided, and I'm asking the board to approve the purchase.
I'll move to award a contract to Viking Savez for the purchase of the Freightliner Johnston street sweeper for a total cost of $270,650.
Did you second that, Victor?
Second.
Did you say 270,000 or 278,000?
278,000.
Okay,
Did I say 270? It should be,
did, but I wasn't.
I may have. It should be 278,650.
Right.
Okay. Are there questions or comments on this? Gail, you notice we don't always go with the cheapest.
Right, and I'd vote for anything to get rid of that dust ball machine that rolls around town right now and just creates a cloud over the community.
It's pretty horrible.
It is terrible.
That's not
It's
a,
fun when they hear it coming.
that's not a sweeper, that's a blower, huh?
Yes, it is. It is.
Okay, seeing no questions or comments, then we'll vote. All in favor of supporting the recommendation to award the contract to Viking Sieves, signify with a thumbs up. Okay, Dan. Thank you.
All right. Last item is a recommendation for a contractor. It's for the passenger rail platform, bike rack informational kiosk. Jen Murray, Planning and Zoning Director, got a grant for $10,000 to pursue a bike rack and kiosk, and I think some other small amenities at the rail passenger platform. So she put out a request for qualifications for contractors. Silver Maple, I believe, was the only bidder that submitted. And as long as they can do it under $10,000, they are the qualified applicant. There is a quick turnaround on this. I'm not sure if that's in your packet, but it was, I think they had to start by around July 1.
Right, and everything has to be finished up by September 30.
Right, which probably did affect, companies that could react to it. But it was one of these, quick build programs, and the idea is to get it done and on the ground. So, so Jen is looking for your approval for the contractor of Silver Maple Construction to move forward with the project.
I'll move to support the Infrastructure Committee's recommendation to contract with Silver Maple for design and construction of the bike rack and information kiosk at the passenger rail platform to be completed in 2021. So I would just kind of clarify that. So the bike rack and information kiosk are to be completed before the end of September. The passenger rail platform to be completed in 2021.
Correct.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Jen, do you have any comments?
No, I'm all set. Thanks.
Okay.
Hi, Jen.
Hi.
Comments from the board? Seeing none, all in favor of supporting the recommendation, signify with a thumbs up. Okay.
All right. I guess now we're at the last item. Is the decision on what to name the Infrastructure Committee. And so there is a brief discussion about that, and the committee members decided to retain the name of Infrastructure Committee by a vote of 5 in favor, 1 opposed, and 1 abstention. So there's your decision. I don't know, you don't have to do anything, I guess, because there's no change.
No. Okay, Dan, thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Dan.
You're welcome. Take care. Yeah.
Dan Warner. There was a resident of Charles Avenue who had mentioned to me that there's a whole set of lights that are out between the high school and Water Street.
Okay.
Just want to let you know.
Yep. Also, all those along the walking path, is that?
I think that's where the uphill or whatever, the steep grade.
Okay.
That section I heard.
Yep. Okay. We'll check.
All right. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Ken, what's next on your list for big things you're going to bring to us?
Actually, I could do a little quick update on the Katy Road culvert. That road closure is expected on July 6th. And that's a 3-week contract. Be a quick turnaround on that. Still haven't heard yet on a start date for the Dow Pond water main. So I'll let you know probably the next time what that schedule is. So that's some of that. Down at the control building, the reuse project, we found a fuel tank buried in the ground out in front of the control building. So it was supposed to have been abandoned when that project was when the wastewater plant moved or operations moved out. I don't know why it wasn't. And so I asked Brent Rakowski from Otter Creek Engineering to say, hey, let's query the state on, do they have any record of that? And so when they came back, they said, no, we don't, but we've got a record of another one from 1986. So we now have 2 fuel tanks that need to come out down there. But that cost will be from the decommissioning, not part of the reuse project. So that's kind of the small details.
So everything seems to be going pretty smooth other than our disappointing bid on the water main project.
Right. Yep.
So Dan, probably another thing we have coming down the pike at some point is discussion about downtown sidewalks and the rail bridge project and what we're going to have to do that's not included, right?
Yeah, so I got a quote from Kabricki some months ago for the downtown sidewalks and curbing. I need to revisit with them on the price, and I'll bring that to the infrastructure committee in July, which will then come to the board here for approval. I got to tell you, there's going to be some unknowns on how that sidewalk is attached to the building on the downstream side of the south end of Main Street, south end of the bridge, where the shop is right there. And then, what was the other thing? I talked to a couple of the owners that have their fuel, their diesel fuel fill connections right on Main Street Stationery and the Vermont Bookstore. So I got to do a little sorting out with them because we have to retain those. But anyway, I'll be back in July to get that approved.
Okay, thanks, Dan.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, next on the agenda, Raven Wark and Kyle Mitchell are here to talk about their efforts with the Middlebury Quality Youth Development Steering Committee. And with that, I'll turn it over to you.
Would one of you like me to share my screen on the presentation, or would one of you like to operate the presentation? You're both on mute.
If you could share, I think that would be best
Okay.
for both of us.
Okay.
Excellent. Thank you. So Raven and I are current interns with the QYD project, the Quality Youth Development project here in Middlebury. And we are giving you folks a short presentation tonight on what we are doing. So here you'll see some biography, so to speak, just kind of a little background of what we are as students at the high school. And so with that being said, we can move on to the next slide. Excellent. So quality youth development in our community. So as it says, what is QID? Well, that's what it is. So that's a brief bullet point of what it is. There's some context and things that go into it, what we will explore in the presentation as we go. Okay, and with that said, Raven will lead you off.
So the QID project was actually inspired and aligned by the Search Institute's 40 developmental assets. So these assets are internal and external factors that the Search Institute has identified that help youth to navigate the journey from childhood to adulthood with healthy characteristics such as decision-making, self-confidence, motivation, and resilience. These assets help a youth's ability to overcome challenges, minimize harm to oneself, and contribute to the well-being of the community. Although these positive youth development principles are well known within the youth services field, they are less known within the broader community. This can be problematic because a majority of the external factors must be fostered by both the community and the family.
Okay, great. All right, so this is kind of a snapshot. We tried not to include an overwhelmingly amount of data and kind of language, so we just left it kind of brief. But as you can see on the chart there, it's just some of who's at risk, kind of fall between the cracks, if you will, and kind of why Raven and I, and really why the project is so important and vital to communities throughout our great state, but also particularly in our town of Middlebury. So with that, I think it can be agreed that, I think teens and youth feel sometimes pressure, peer pressure, it could be positive peer pressure or not so well of peer pressure. And there's a lot of media content out there that can be great and not so great. I think sometimes, I think younger folks can feel that although they may be irrelevant to the outside world, and sometimes they just need that extra hello or that extra information available to them. So I think with that there, I think we can continue.
So in order to become a QID community, there are a set of 10 benchmarks that you have to complete as a community. In order to first become certified, there are only 7 that you need to complete, and there are 10 that you can complete to become a 1-star, 2-star, 3-star community. These benchmarks are guidelines, and they are used to measure the community's commitment to positive youth development. So the first benchmarks are, so the first one is to have a welcoming, inclusive, and accessible space in the community for any youth, including minority groups, to gather safely when out of school. And then the second one is funding by the community in support of youth groups.
Yeah, so those are some of the benchmarks, guidelines, and I'll continue with a few more. There are other benchmarks. However, we felt like it wasn't necessary to include them all in the presentation this evening. However, if you would like to review them, please reach out to Raven or I, and we'd be happy to provide you with that documentation. But benchmark 5. So, in other words, youth are welcome posters are displayed in the community. And so, for example, in some of our businesses display windows in our downtown area, you will notice a sign that says something along the lines of "Youth are welcome," by QID project. So That kind of shows that when youth are, walking down street, bicycling downtown, they have that poster there, and it's kind of that extra shout out to say that you're welcome. And of course, it's advertisement as well for the business, but particularly just shows that, wow, they actually are including youth, and I think it's just that uplifter that the younger folks, youth need to succeed. And then benchmark 6, the engagement of youth as members of the board of directors, nonprofits. So that's kind of a smear of some of the guidelines that Raven and I have been working on in the sense of following and developing potentially ideas and solutions to make that possible, and to be engaged with that kind of work. And so it's really showing that youth are really welcome and are really taking a lead with other community members and officials within nonprofit organizations.
Yes, so when achieving these benchmarks, there is a benefit not just to the youth of the community, but to the entire community. So through earning the QID community certification, the entire town will be more actively engaged in a discussion about positive youth development, principles like the 40 developmental assets, which deepens their commitment to community support of youth. This support better enables youth to succeed in school, and then the success will then benefit the community through the greater likelihood that young adult residents will become a productive member of the community after completing school.
Yeah. I think it's one thing that's important to add. Kathleen, is there another slide, perhaps?
That is the last slide.
Okay. So I will continue from a previous slide that Raven and I were working on earlier today. So we conducted a brief survey within our Middlebury students, and it wasn't a huge at-large student survey among our town. It was a small, but it was out of 27 students, 25 students said that with a Youth Are Welcome poster or things like that displayed in our community on bulletin boards, business displays, they would feel more, welcome and more sense of belonging that they feel to succeed, but also, to be a member and contributing member of the town of Middlebury. So that is what I have. I have another piece I will speak about in a minute. Raven, would you like to add anything other than what we've discussed here tonight?
I think it's important to acknowledge how far we've come in such a short time. So right now, Middlebury is very close to achieving certification. We are just tying up some loose ends on our last 2 out of the 7 benchmarks, and by the end of the month we should be completely certified.
Yes, that's right, Raven. Very exciting process, and so within the few weeks we will have that certificate, which in very simple terms will say that our community cares about our youth, cares about our neighbors, our residents, and are promoting leadership and a sense of belonging. And it's really interesting process. Exis has done that as well. They've been working on their certification. So the idea is that our town will become one of those certified QID communities, which is really exciting.
And hopefully the first QID community to become certified.
Yes. So hopefully, number one on that scale, in the sense of having that credential, and there's a lot of things that go into it that can be quite tricky in the process. But I think with the right connections and as we've discovered with planning and coordinating, the benchmarks, those have really been our guide frames through this. And it's really led us to where we are currently, which is towards the final stage of earning that certification. So thank you. And with that said, Raven, you can add anything if you'd like, but with that said, if you have any questions, please let us know. And if you have any comments, feel free.
Heather?
So I was going to ask how many Vermont communities have this certification, and it sounds like you were just saying if you guys are successful, Middlebury will be the first in Vermont?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay.
So that's a very exciting milestone, I think, for our town, but also from a youth standpoint as well. And the idea is that it will be a sense of belonging for youth in our town, but also encourage other communities throughout our state to earn or receive that certification.
It should be said too, we're kind of neck and neck with Essex, so we're really trying to be number one here.
But all about teamwork, and it's been a really great project so far.
Great. Thank you for the presentation.
Dan?
Yeah, I've known Kyle for a while, and I'd just like to say thanks to Kyle and Raven for being involved as a youth and doing something like this and trying to make our community better. I'm impressed with you two and impressed with a lot of the youth of this community, and get jazzed when I see people like you doing things that are good for us. So thank you.
Thank you.
I was going to add quickly a couple of comments. Kyle and Raven really stepped in at a time when the group was dealing with the COVID situation. We had two other leaders who just couldn't make it through the hump for obvious reasons. Everything got thrown up in the air, so they really stepped up in a big way for our community. We were really impressed when we started going through the project at how many things Middlebury already was doing really well. That's something we talked about a lot in meetings. The community already really showed a tremendous amount of care for youth in our area. And I just wanted to add, since it wasn't in their presentation, some of the things that the group has done. They planned and hosted a community forum, which was attended by representatives from the college, somebody from Actor, who came and engaged and came to their presentation. We've engaged with Vermont 211, and the group actually designed a poster that will go up in our community first, but the representative from Vermont 211 was really hoping it could be used elsewhere as well, statewide for Vermont, that's focused on youth. And they've engaged with local businesses. Part of it was getting out in the community and talking to local businesses about how they felt about youth and, that sort of thing. So at any rate, they've really done a tremendous job under a lot of strain. And this is a lot to accomplish in 6 months. So I just want to say how impressed I've been with all of them. You've only met Kyle and Raven here, but there have been about 12 youth that have worked on this over the past 6 months, ranging in age from 13 to 19. So it's been a tremendous group effort. So I applaud them.
Thank you, Lindsay.
Yeah. I would be interested to learn a little bit more if you have any kind of a sheet that talks about what are the assets, because you've got more involved in there. It says there's 40 contributing assets and whatnot. So what things do they look at within the community? If you had something that you could forward to Kathleen, she could share with us, it would be good to know what you guys are working on. And congratulations on going so far in such a short period of time. Appreciate you sharing that with us.
Absolutely. I'm sure that could be arranged, Brian, for sure. Absolutely. Thank you.
Okay. All right. Are there any other questions of Kyle and Raven? Okay. Then I think it's Kathleen's turn to review the year-to-date budget reports. She's got her internet back. We hope.
We also have to do the refunding resolution. Oh, I'm sorry. You got ahead of myself with the budget reports. So as I've been reporting, we've had a lot of variation in the budget in all of the budgets this year due to COVID. Some decreased expenditures overall, and some decreased revenues. So I'm hopeful that we'll end the year on target in the black, but it is going to be tight for that. I did express some concern initially after the last tax due date of March 15th, but now we're down to $152,000 of outstanding delinquent taxes for the current fiscal year, compared to overall collections of 7.5 million. So we're certainly in an acceptable range there, under what our delinquent outstanding taxes were at this time in 2017-2018 fiscal year.
That's great. Be interested to see what we collect this quarter in sales in our local option tax.
I don't think I'm contributing much on that, I can tell you.
No, I'm sure you aren't, Dan.
Yeah.
Okay, any questions on the budget, Kathleen? Okay. Number 12, we have a new number 12 that we moved, and that's application for cattails, first and third. Doing business as Tavern on the T, and Ann's not on, but there was an application for a first and third class liquor license for cattails, doing business as Tavern on the T, and Ann was hoping that the select board could approve this at our meeting. Was previously under the corporate name of Tavern on the T LLC, DBA Tavern on the T, and they need to change their corporate name, so they have to submit a new application. Are there any questions on that? Hearing none, pleasure of the board. If you look at the email that was sent out today at 2:06 from Kathleen.
I don't have the email in front of me, but I'll make a motion to approve the first and third class liquor licenses for Cattails. Was it LLC?
Cattails Inc.,
Cattails Inc.
DBA Tavern on the T.
Thank you, Brian.
Heather, I would just note that there's also an outside consumption permit that goes with that, which we are expecting shortly.
Okay, so should I do a separate motion for that, or does it, can it go in the same motion?
I think you can do it all in the same one.
Okay, I'll amend my motion to also include proposal for, or approval of the outside consumption permit for Tavern on the Green, DBA and Cattails Incorporated.
Tavern on the T.
Tavern.
Green.
Beth will make it look good in the minutes for me.
Gives us something to fix up next time. Okay, do I have a second?
Second.
Moved and seconded. Questions or comments? Hearing none, all in favor, signify with a thumbs up. Okay. All right, and number 13 is pushed till the next meeting. So Kathleen, the refunding resolution and certificate?
Yes, so you had approved issuing this last million of a $3 million.
Kathleen's been having problems with her internet. We won't say who the provider is.
I lost power earlier briefly, so.
So maybe I can just jump in and handle it for Kathleen. It's a follow-up to our December 2019 approval to the issue of an application with the Vermont Municipal Bond Bank for the final $1 million of the $3 million in bonds authorized by Middlebury voters in 2010 in order to be issued to fund various water system improvements. And in the notes here, it talks about the meeting minutes of that December 17th meeting when Jackie joined us and went through it. And Heather made a motion to authorize the submission, and the motion passed 7 in favor. With approval obtained from the bond bank, the refunding resolution now before the board affirms the town's intent to liquidate the existing $1 million liability in the general ledger previously authorized by the 2010 bond vote related to the completed water system improvements through the issuance of a 10-year refunding note at an annual fixed rate of 3.48% commencing July 1st of this year. The note will be held by the National Bank of Middlebury and payable in annual installments of $100,000. The board's approval will cover 2 documents, the refunding resolution itself and a $1 million capital improvement note outlining the payment schedule. Are there any questions of what we're doing here? Hearing none, what's the pleasure of the board?
I'll make a motion to the refunding resolution and capital improvement refunding note for the water system improvements approved by bond vote on July 13, 2010.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Once more, I'll ask, are there any questions on this? Hearing none, all in favor of supporting the motion, signify with a thumbs up. Okay. The college is going to join us
Here she is.
on July 28th. So prepare any questions or thoughts you have at that point. If you want to see the letter, I know it was sent out to the board by Sue and forwarded by Kathleen to all of us. And so if you hadn't seen it, that talks about it, what was sent out to the college community by College President Lord Patton. And for those in the community that are watching, the college has a website you can go to and get that as well. So, Nick, approval of the check warrants?
Okay, just let me dig through my debris pile here and pull the thing out. All right, here we are. Okay, under the authority granted by the Select Board on April 28, 2020, I have reviewed and approved on behalf of the board total expenditures in the amount of $449,481.75. This consists of $309,244.10 for accounts payable and $140,237.65 for payroll for the period June 10 through June 23, 2020, and move the board's approval of payment of these expenditures.
Nick,
Yes.
the period you mentioned is different from what I see on the agenda.
There were some last minute things came in.
And then the period you said from June.
Oh, June 10 through June 23rd?
Yeah, it should be May 27 to June 9, right?
I think that's a typographical error on the agenda notes.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, that's how I have it. So,
All right. Thank you.
thank you.
Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Hey, don't leave me hanging there on this one.
Any questions or comments? Hearing none, all in favor, signify with a thumbs up. Okay, Kathleen, Town Manager's Report.
First, to note, the town has received several letters, both from inside and outside of Middlebury, expressing support for a current movement calling for defunding police departments as a means of addressing systematic racism in the United States. The letters, most of which are based on a template, ask that the select board refuse the FY21 budget increase of $46,234 for the Middlebury Police Department, MPD. And that you halt any funding that has already been approved in order to begin defunding the police immediately. Given the inherent complexity of the issues raised by the defund movement and the select board's long history of transparent and informed community engagement, town staff have begun developing an information packet about the Middlebury Police Department that could be shared with the public and uploaded to the town website. Included here could be a fact sheet regarding how the department is structured and how it functions within the community, historical information showing PD funding in proportion to Middlebury's total operating budget, and reports showing Middlebury police activity in a variety of categories over time. The board may wish to begin exploring on Tuesday evening or perhaps at its July 9th meeting how it would like to address the issues and demands requests reflected in these letters. We will collect any additional correspondence that comes in after the meeting is distributed and have sent it out to you this afternoon. So that was one piece. We also received from the Division of Property Valuation and Review a summary of changes that have been made to the 2021 property tax timeline. And finally, in light of the continuing uncertainty regarding how the pandemic will impact planning for both the August 11th state primary and the November 3rd presidential election, Town Clerk Ann Webster is encouraging Middlebury voters to request early or vote by mail ballots from the My Voter page on the Secretary of State's website. This information also appears on the Town Clerk's webpage on the Middlebury website and has also submitted an ad to the Addison Independent to further create public awareness around this important issue. And that's it for me.
Okay, if I ask a question?
Yes.
So Kathleen, just kind of a procedure question on the whole defund movement. I would assume that any kind of decision we would make that affect the budget would have to go back before town voters, correct?
That is correct.
And in order to do that, we'd have to hold a special town meeting and have a special town meeting vote. And this is a budget that's already been approved, goes into effect July. It just seems like a process that we can't easily hold right now. So I guess I'm kind of in favor in spending time over the next year, maybe looking at it, but not something that I would recommend doing to the budget for this, for FY21 or 20, whatever the right year is.
FY22, I think.
So we're going to be starting FY21. So what you're saying is hold off to the FY22 budget, which starts July 1st, 2021.
Yes.
Which would be decided at town meeting. Right.
Correct.
I just think it would be incredibly difficult to try to hold a special town meeting on a budget change for a budget that's supposed to go in effect in a couple of weeks, given the conditions we're experiencing with the pandemic and not being able to get people together and trying to do it virtually. And I don't think it's right for the select board to make a change to the budget without townspeople approval. So I just don't think the timeline is feasible right now for any kind of change to the fiscal year 20 budget.
If I could just say a little something about this, you know, we have letters from maybe a dozen or so, call it 20 people. We have 8,500 citizens in the community. I think we have not typically made brash decisions on something that is this important. And my push is that I think it's appropriate that given the national scenario and what we see, that we look at it and make sure that we're in sync with the intent of the general populace and the voters. But the information that these letters, you know, what they're asking, they just took the budget increase from 1 year and they're just asking based on that, but they haven't looked at the entire idea of what our police department does and how we utilize them, and any issues that we have. And maybe that's something that we can look at over the next period of time, but I think we to make have any kind of a discussion about defunding our police department is premature, and unless somebody feels differently. I wanted to get into that in the board member concerns, but since we're talking about it now, I just get the sense for how everybody feels about what kind of a process we would do. But I think it would be, you know, there's almost as many policemen as there are letters that we've received, and so and they're not all from even Middlebury citizens. So it is a very significant issue in our country, but I don't know how we address it within our communities to show that we support it. And it, you know, I'm not sure that the police is the place that we need to address it within our own community. So
I had a comment.
Hold
on. I'm opening an ice cream. Sorry. This is the bribe that will get me through the rest of this meeting. I really appreciate that people are having this conversation. And I see those letters as the start of a bigger conversation for our community. I am on the Surge listserv, and I do know that some of that correspondence went out to that group, and I'm wondering if we might want to, you know, just contact some people through the Surge group and let them know that if they would like to come to the board with some more cogent thoughts on the matter, that we'd be willing to engage in that conversation. I think that's a potential next step that accomplishes what I would hope to accomplish, which is just engaging the community in conversation.
I think that's something that we could put on the agenda and entertain that. Lindsay, I agree. I think the conversation's important that we are involved in it, and where that leads us, I think you need to really look at what we as a community can do to support it. Is that something the board, Kathleen and I would work the agenda and figure it out so we can give some time to, but I think over the next next couple meetings, we would figure out how to get it into the agenda, and maybe at the next meeting. So
I think that makes a lot of sense, Brian, because I mean, I looked at those letters, and the first couple I found were kind of interesting and what was being presented. And then as I looked at them, of course, and I realized they were a form letter. And in many respects, it felt like they weren't really talking to our town. It seems like things that are much more relevant to large urban areas, and we're not a large urban area. Not that we're immune from some of the problems, but I think it would be much more valid to have a cross dialogue of who we are and what issues may be problematic that need to be resolved, and not look at something called defunding, which I don't even know what that means in the case of our police department, especially when I look at all the things that our really high quality officers do. With the defunding, well, when you only have 2 officers on a shift, who's going to come to that vehicle accident or that search and rescue? We really need to hear a lot of what they do and to hear what concerns may be out there, because if there's a problem, certainly we want to know about it, but we want to know about it with regards to Middlebury. I mean, some of the stuff that they were mentioning were things that aren't even relevant to our town that I could see. So that makes sense as just a good cross dialogue as a first step, and to determine, is there a problem, and if so, what is it, and how we move forward. But just to come up with a bland statement of defund, that means nothing to me and shows little thought for the overall objective of what we're trying to do, and that's have a town where fairness and equity is the norm.
Does this sound like a good next step, everyone?
Yeah, Brian, just to clarify, I was just trying to understand the process a little better. I was afraid that staff was going to spend a lot of time looking at a budget that the town and people have already approved that goes into effect in a couple of weeks. But I think it's much more reasonable to consider whatever we consider for the next budget cycle and not the current one, just given the time frame and what's involved in the current pandemic situation. That's all I was trying to get across.
Okay.
Well, in the engineering world, the first step towards solution is understanding the problem. And I'm going to say that we're trying to do what we can to understand, and there's certainly, I'm sure as many of these people have submitted letters, would present items that would help us understand it better. But the idea of just immediately jumping in and saying we're going to do something without a full understanding of the issue is quite honestly ridiculous. You don't do that. We have to understand the problem first.
Victor?
Well, I mean, the problem is very deep-seated. There is a very strong element of racism in this country. And one of the things that makes me hopeful in this whole affair is there seems to be a great awakening, and people are looking at themselves and thinking about it's a cultural problem. And it seems to me that the proposal in the letters that I've received, and I know I've been receiving one regularly from someone from Florida, and really don't address the deep issue. And I mean, there needs to be a change of heart. And when I talk about this, it's I think we've all come to a realization of how destructive and terrible this heritage of racism in our history, in our nation's history is and but so I think we need to take the issue very seriously. I think the proposal how to deal with it is not, no one has given us, and I think we should talk about it, sure.
Okay. Yeah, I think it may manifest itself differently in each community, and certainly what we see with the police doing on TV in some of the communities is not what we see our police doing here. So how we phrase the subject for discussion, maybe, Lindsay, would you work with Kathleen and I as far as how to phrase it on an agenda item, and then we could get the word out for those who would like to engage in that?
Yeah, and I mean, I would actually suggest that we, offer to put people on the agenda, but maybe give them time to prepare if that's where we're headed with it.
Yeah.
Meaning we don't pick the date necessarily.
So, okay, so maybe be further out.
Yeah.
Okay, no, I'm very supportive of that, so. Why don't we, let's start with figuring out, if you would work with Kathleen and I, Lindsay, and we'll come up with maybe some stuff to submit to the, what was the group, Searle?
So Serge, I don't know that Serge is spearheading anything. I just know that, I just recognize some names from the listserv.
And maybe we would, I don't know, we'll figure out how to put it out so that we solicit feedback when people would like, when they feel they could be prepared to discuss it.
Right.
Okay. All right, well, let's do that. Board member concerns. Victor.
Well, I just hope everyone stays well, and I hope there is a great enlightenment, that a great awakening to deal with our deep moral issues in all of us.
Yep. Thank you. Nick?
What he said. I have nothing else to add. That was well put, Victor.
Lindsay?
Sorry, I had to unmute myself. I was gonna just mention that I, after reading Ann's note about, getting a mail-in ballot, I did go to the website and put my information in, and something's not working, even though I'm registered. So I would just encourage people to do that early and be sure you have time to work out the kinks, because it's gonna be very important for all of us to be able to vote.
Amen. Heather?
I don't have anything, Brian. Thank you.
Okay. Farhad?
Nothing for me, thanks.
Okay. Dan?
Just second what Victor said. Thank you, Victor.
Yeah. Could I just add one more thing? I wish we could have meetings in person. This Zoom really.
I'll second that.
Yeah, once again, what he said.
Yeah, he said it again. We're not prohibited from meeting in person anymore, are we? I mean, I know the rules for my business, so.
Well, I think the room.
What I understand, I think part of the issue would be all of us wearing masks in the meeting room. And I don't know if we have the capacity for everyone, all of the board members and some public in that conference room.
So you're gonna veto it, huh?
Excuse me?
I said, are you going to veto our proposal?
I'm not, I'm providing information. And I think things are always changing and evolving.
Yeah.
And let's follow those guidelines quickly. We have 3 weeks to the next meeting, and we can always provide Zoom access and meet in person, even at the last minute, if it's something that's newly available to us.
Sure.
We have the nice big rec building. It was just a thought.
Go across the floor at each other? We're supposed to wear 10 feet apart. We don't need the mask. Well,
So as you know, we're set up in the large conference room for direct broadcasting on MCTV, whereas we wouldn't be in the recreation.
I was just playing with you, Kathleen. Just want to make sure you still have your sense of humor.
We all need, we'll have to have megaphones so we can communicate with each other in the gymnasium.
We can do that.
I talked to Kathleen a little bit about this today, and we were brainstorming, and if you knew it was going to be nice weather, you could maybe even hold it outside. But as much as everybody wants to meet in person, there are some challenges as we talk through it. The idea of masking and being able to understand each other, and especially to have those listening to it understand us. I went to get a coffee and I couldn't understand. We were back and forth 3 times just before I could order a coffee. So
I deal with this all day, Brian, in my store. I have customers and they want to say something. I don't know. I can't even tell who it is sometimes. They'll say hi to me, how are you? And I have no clue who it is.
Yeah.
And
Name tags. We need to wear name tags, everybody.
Well, let's do a demo. Can you hear me? Am I coming through clear?
I can't even see you.
Okay, we got to work on something here.
all right. So I think that there's no executive session, and we've got a couple of things that are carrying over to future meetings, but business continues to move along. I hope everybody wishes Kathleen a pleasant, well-deserved vacation, and that the bike trailer is workable so they can hit the road. And we'll see you when you're back. In your absence, Chris has got the helm.
I'm going to be staying close in touch, and Tom Henley has my back if there's any true crisis that I can't address from the road.
All right. Yeah, I got to get with Chief. I was sitting at the, one last thing here. I was sitting at the traffic light by the high school at a red light, and that light and that following light headed south were red, and somebody passed me through that red light, and then the light turned green. I went up through and they passed a car right there in front of the Key Bank, which is definitely not a passing zone. Last night at 2 nights ago at 9:15, with dark and with no lights on. So I do have the license plate, Chief.
Oh, good.
So anyways, I hope everybody is enjoying this beautiful weather that's cooking us. And I will solicit a motion to adjourn and go get some ice cream.
moved.
Second.
Second.
All in favor? All right. Have a good evening, everyone.
Good night.
Night, everyone.
All right.
Thank you.
Right on time.
We try.